Thank you very, very much. And Tom, thank you for your introduction and those comments. As you know, Tom Holman is he's a straight shooter. He tells it like it is, and he's a man of action. He gets things done, and I'm pleased. Couldn't tell you how pleased I am with the leadership that we've had from Homeland Security, ICE, Border Patrol, our customs officers, and DA, and the Inspector's Investigation Office, and I appreciate that much. I want to thank all of you in law enforcement that are here. We know how important you are. We know that crime and public safety cannot be done without our state and local officials as well as federal. Mayor Jimenez, we appreciate you and your hospitality and leadership here. It was great to talk with you. I didn't realize he came up as a fireman. He understands public safety and understands what it's like to be out there at risk for your public for the public and public safety. Had a good conversation with Marco Rubio this morning. We talked about a number of issues, and he expressed his regret he couldn't be with us today. I want to thank our acting United States Attorney, Ben Greenberg. Was Ben here? Where we? I see Ben. There he is. Very good over here. So he and his team do a great job, and I got to tell you, we respect the United States attorneys. We know the value that they play in making this a safer and better country, and we're working hard to put together a great team of United States attorneys. Miami-Dade State Attorney Kathy Fernandez-Rundle is here, I believe. Is she here? She's been a great partner in helping us combat violent crime. So I again would say we are totally aware in this Department of Justice the contributions that state and local law enforcement plays to public safety. 85% of law officers are state and local. We will not have improvements if we're not working hand in hand with that large cohort of people. The federal officers are fabulous. We have really additional capabilities that we can bring to bear, but collaboratively, that's how things work the best. We've had a tough weekend in Charlotte, and I know you've all been following that. I want to thank the state and local people and the federal people that worked so hard since those tragic events there. We cannot, and in no way can we accept or apologize for racism, bigotry, hatred, violence, and those kind of things that too often arise in our country. I would say that the state people were engaged aggressively. Saturday night, FBI was interviewing people in Ohio. They're moving aggressively in a collaborative way, using the interstate capabilities that the federal agents have, as well as the on-the-ground capabilities of our state and local law officers. So I'm honored to be in Miami-Dade with you today. And so I'm always impressed when I visit this area. The city keeps getting bigger. Business is booming. And I recently read that Miami-Dade is one of the safest cities in America. That is good news indeed. And as you know, this was not always the case. When I became U.S. Attorney in 1981, and Stanley Marcus was Judge Stanley Marcus now was my cohort here, I remember the challenges that you faced. Violent crime surged. Drugs were too prevalent. Police regularly recorded upwards of 500 murders a year, and the city was in danger of crumbling. But the people of Miami-Dade refused to tolerate this violence, and last year the homicide count was barely a third of what it was in the 1980s. How many hundreds, how many thousands of lives were saved in this city because of proactive, improved community policing by your police force? It wasn't easy, but this place has truly earned its nickname of the Magic City. Congratulations, Mayor. And your success is even more remarkable since the violent crime is surging in places all over our country now, including the historic rise in the nation's murder rate of 11% just year before last, and up again last year, the preliminary statistics indicate. Miami-Dade is an example of what is possible through hard work, professional policing, and a dedication to the rule of law. It's proof that the entire nation, it gives us an example. All of us can do better throughout this country. It's not impossible. Crime is not some force of nature like a tide coming in that can't be confronted or dealt with effectively. We can make a difference, in my opinion. I've seen it happen, and I know it can happen. During the last administration, the Department of Justice Inspector General, our Inspector General, sent 10 letters to jurisdictions they had reason to believe were not complying with federal immigration law. Last week, we sent a letter to your mayor, and today I'm here to announce that Miami-Dade is now in compliance, full compliance, and eligible for all federal law enforcement grant dollars. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership. This is good news for law enforcement and for the citizens of Miami-Dade. It means more money for crime fighting. It means we're partners together in keeping everyone safe. Unfortunately, we have areas in the country that are not doing so well. Chicago, that just sued us a couple of days ago, is not following this example. And this is give you some numbers that were surprising to me, and I think important for us to consider, really. It says something and challenges all. In Chicago, a city of almost exactly the same 2.7 million person population of Miami-Dade, more than 433 people have been murdered just from the beginning of this year. They expect to hit over 700 by the time the year is out. That's more than 3 times as many as in Miami-Dade. Last year, Chicago's 2.7 million residents experienced more murders than the 12.5 million people who live in New York and Los Angeles combined. The Chicago Police Department also reported more than 4,300 shooting victims. In the first half of last year, violent crime across the nation increased 5%, but in Chicago it increased 24%. The most fundamental duty of government is to ensure the safety, which is a part of the liberty of its people. Respect for the rule of law has broken down. In Chicago, I suggest the so-called sanctuary policies are one sad example of that. Every year, too many American lives are victimized as a result of sanctuary city policies, whether it be theft, robbery, drugs, assault, battery, even murder. Here's how it works right now for us. After the police arrest an illegal alien in sanctuary cities, charge him with a crime, they fingerprint and book him in the jail. When federal immigration authorities learn that this criminal alien is in Chicago's custody, they can issue an arrest warrant and ask the city to either notify them before the criminal is released or to transfer him to federal custody. But the leaders in Chicago have made this a political issue and direct their police to refuse both these requests. Instead, the police are forced to release the criminal alien back into the community without regard to the seriousness of the crime or how long the rap sheet may be. This is a serious problem for the people. A few years ago, an alien was arrested and had his license revoked for driving under the influence. Shortly after, he was arrested again for driving with a suspended license. After Cook County ignored ICE's detainer request, refused to honor it, the alien drove under the influence once again just a few months later, and this time he struck and killed a skateboarder. Tragically, in another case, an illegal alien was convicted of aggravated domestic battery. ICE lodged an immigration detainer, but again the county did not order it. After his release, that same alien murdered a 15-year-old girl and shot her mother. She was only 15 and could be alive today if Chicago's leadership had prioritized safety over politics. Sadly, we know Chicago is not alone. Just 3 weeks ago, Sergio Jose Martinez was arrested in Portland, Oregon. He was an illegal alien who had been deported at least 20 times. Police reports show he was arrested at least 10 times just this year, accused of everything from possessing drugs to stealing a car. Federal immigration authorities properly lodged a detainer against him just a few months before, asking to be notified when he was set to be released. But authorities in Oregon refused. According to allegations, Martinez then broke into the home of a 65-year-old Portland woman by crawling through her bedroom window. Once inside, reportedly he forced this woman to the ground, used scarves and socks to blindfold, bind, and gag her, and then raped her and slammed her head into the wooden floor. How can these politicians hear this story and do nothing? How can they look in the eye and her into the eye and tell her they did nothing to stop this from happening? It's not an aberration, really. This is happening all over the country, as Tom indicated. These policies do far broader damage to the country than many understand. At its root, it is a rejection of our immigration laws and a declaration of open borders. They openly say, we are a welcoming city. Come into our city, and we won't even tell the federal police when you commit a crime if you're here unlawfully. It says if you enter the country last week with a criminal record and get to Chicago, for example, we will not even support deporting you even after you commit a serious crime against one of our citizens. Now, this is lawlessness. It makes no sense as a matter of policy. It's not moral or legal. And these lawless policies do more than shield individual criminal aliens. They also shelter and protect lethal gangs and transnational criminal organizations like the Latin Kings, the Bloods, MS-13. These predators thrive when crime is not met with consequences. This state of lawlessness allows gangs to smuggle guns, drugs, even humans across borders and around cities and communities. Sanctuary jurisdictions provide safe harbor for some of the most dangerous criminals in our country. That makes a sanctuary city, really, in a way, it's fair to say, it makes that city a trafficker, smuggler, or a predator's best friend. Now, I want to be clear about something. Local police are not the problem. They risk their lives every day in the service of law and the people they protect. The problem is these jurisdictions tie our police officers' hands and endanger federal immigration officers, as Tom said, when they're forced to pursue these criminal aliens outside of the jails and prisons. Yet these sanctuary jurisdictions have the gall to feign outrage when their police departments lose federal funds as a result of their misfeasance or malfeasance. So we want to do everything that we can to help state and local law enforcement. President Trump has sent me an executive order, and it was pretty simple. Reduce crime in America. That's your mission. Reduce crime in America, not preside over some new rise after 30 years of decline in crime. And that's what we intend to do. But these grants we have can help in crime reduction. We want all cities to have them. But we cannot continue giving taxpayer money to cities that actively undermine the safety and efficacy of federal law enforcement and actively frustrate efforts to reduce crime in their own cities. So, if the people in Chicago and these other cities are concerned about losing money, I suggest not call me, call your city council and your mayor. The city's leaders have even gone so far as to claim that these sanctuary city policies help reduce crime by encouraging illegal aliens to report it when it happens, but no evidence supports that claim. To the contrary, I would note, for example, that in Chicago it had one of the lowest murder investigation clearance rates in the country. Only in 1 out of every 4 murders is a suspect even identified. Far from making the city safer, these policies likely make cooperation with law enforcement more difficult. If there are no real consequences for the criminal, no witness will risk their life to report the crime. They come forward, report a crime, the criminal's back in the street in front of their house the next day. This is not something people want to see happen to them. It means criminals walk free and victims must suffer in silence. And what does it say to the most vulnerable communities when even the police are unable to keep repeat violent offenders off their streets? Rather than acknowledge soaring murder counts or the heartbreaking stories told by victims' families, this city, Chicago, has chosen to sue the federal government. The mayor complains that our focus on enforcing the law would require, quote, a reordering of law enforcement practice in the city. But that's exactly the point. For the sake of the city, Chicago's leaders need to recommit to policies that punish criminals instead of protecting them. They need to protect their citizens and not the criminals. Americans, all Americans, have a right to a full and equal protection under the law. The people of Miami-Dade know the rule of law guarantees equality and opportunity. It's essential for financial prosperity. Protecting this guarantee is why the government of Miami-Dade made its decision and is working with the federal law enforcement, not against us. And that's critical because it shows that this jurisdiction is serious about protecting its citizens from danger and its law enforcement officers from any unnecessary risk. In fact, the majority of this country believes that all cities should do the same, and most do. The vast majority do. According to one poll, 80% of Americans believe that cities should turn over criminal aliens to immigration officials. Well, certainly, I'm not surprised at that. Leaders in jurisdictions like Miami-Dade, Lansing, Michigan, Westchester County, New York, believe it too, which is why they have stood up for the people they serve by choosing the rule of law. So to all sanctuary jurisdictions across the country, I say Miami-Dade is doing it, other cities are doing it, and so can you. Work with us. Please help us enforce a lawful system of immigration that keeps us safe and serves the national interest. That's what the American people want. They've asked that of their politicians for 30 years. We admit 1.1 million people a year lawfully in this country to permanent legal residence. Green cards, 1.1 million. No country is close to that. We need a system that says, make your application, wait your turn, and do the right thing. Do not attempt to enter this country unlawfully, and particularly to criminals who want to come into that country. Maybe they're being run out of their hometowns. We don't have no obligation to admit or to allow such people to stay in the country. The Department of Justice will not concede a single block or a single street corner in this United States to lawlessness, drugs, and crime. Nor will we tolerate the loss of innocent life because of a handful of jurisdictions that believe they're above the law. So I know this city and county will be an example of the good that comes from following the law. We have already seen that. The same Independence Day weekend, when Chicago suffered more than 100 shootings and 15 homicides, Miami-Dade also had a historic number of shooting deaths. 0. I hope more jurisdictions follow the leadership of your community by choosing to follow the law, because we all want to do the same thing, to protect our families, defend our countries, make our country safer, make our cities safer, make our country more prosperous. So thank you, Miami-Dade. And to all the law enforcement officers here, state, local, federal, I look forward to working with you to do just that. This Department of Justice has our back. You have our thanks. Thank you all, and God bless you.